So, my father, there were things about him that I always remember. One was that he and I, we always fished together. We loved the ocean, the both of us. We were always going somewhere. We were either surf fishing or going out on the boat way out far to catch tuna or big snapper or grouper. Sometimes we'd sell them, and sometimes we'd just keep them for us. But that was something we had in common. And I remember he always had his wallet. His wallet always fascinated me. I don't know why. Because he would never buy a new one. You could buy him one, he would say thank you, but he would always probably stick it in a drawer and never carry it. The one he carried was old and beat up and brown and had a rubber band wrapped around it. Thick. I always imagined the treasures it would contain, what would be in it. I didn't know. But I just knew he always carried it. Every day when he'd go to work, he'd go to work for a major construction company as an engineer. He'd have his briefcase and he'd wear his suit, tie. He'd leave for work in the morning and kiss my mother goodbye, and he'd go. And he'd come home from work at night, and we'd tell him about our day at school. And that was our life until he passed. And so one day I found the wallet sitting in a box. I thought, well, he's passed away now, and whatever's in here's in here. Let me just take a look. So I carefully took the rubber band off and laid it gently down on the table, and I unfolded the wallet, and it was pretty much coming apart. It was in pieces. The leather was so old and tattered. It has initials, J, and the other initials stamped in it. And I unfolded the paperwork gently, and something metal fell out. It was a dog tag. The name had the same initials as my father, but the name was different. I didn't understand that either. But I knew that people oftentimes, when they change their names, they would use the same initials but a different name. And I found military script from the Pacific and from Indochina and different places. And I found little tidbits of paper and scraps, and I found things like that. And most of them didn't make any sense to me at the time, and some of them still don't, because I could never figure out what they were. And I never figured out why there was only one dog tag. Well, back then, people that had a dog tag were issued a serial number. Now they use a social security number for their number. But back then, they used a serial number. Well, if you died or in combat or whatever, one of the dog tags was placed between the front teeth, and the mouth was jammed shut so that the body could be identified by the people that do grave registration to keep track of the bodies. And the other one was usually given to the family or whatever. Well, here my father was carrying one dog tag on a chain, a little short chain, with a name with the same initials as his, but different. So I thought, well, I knew he had changed his name once, because the name he was born with and the name that he died with were different. So maybe he changed it in the middle. Maybe he had another name, and this was it. So I ran that name too. I sent paperwork off and asked for records, and was again politely sent back responses. We're sorry, but there are no records for this name or this serial number being from someone in the military. We're sorry, we can't help you. So there I was with information about a man that I could never verify any of. Even the company he worked for. He worked for a very large international construction company based in the U.S., but with interests all over the world. And my father traveled a great deal. He would go overseas. He had to travel to the U.S. He was always flying somewhere. Sometimes he'd be gone for a couple of days, or sometimes he'd be gone for a week, but he'd always come home. But I remember now, in all the years that I lived with him from my earliest memories. I never really knew what he did. I went to work with him one day, and all I remember were just big rooms of computers. But I don't know what he did with them or what information was on them. They were just big discs of tape that would run from one to the other. And I'd never saw a computer before. It was something I really couldn't comprehend, but it was as big. The room was huge. It was just a huge room of these big machines. And he worked for this company. And I remember at his funeral, they sent a beautiful wreath. And so I called them because my father had always told me where he went to college. And I said, well, maybe they know something. Maybe they have records or something. So I called the company that he worked for. They said, we can never verify where he went to college, where he went to school, or his education. And I thought, well, if you can never verify his education, how could you possibly hire him to do what he did? To work on these high-tech things. For that time, it was very high-tech. That was in the 70s and early 80s. How could you hire him to work on these things if you could never verify that he had education and be doing it? So I called the university that he said on paper that he went to and checked. They had no record of him ever going there. I gave them every name that I could think to give him. I didn't know which name he went there under. If he went there under his first name that he was born with, or the name that he had when he died, or the name that he had maybe in the middle, the one I found on the dog tag, or maybe he had a different name. I don't know. He never would say much about his military career.